Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of NU Takes. I'm Michael Barthelemy.
And I'm Didi. We're here to give our own hot takes and spicy opinions about all things Northwestern sports. So this past Saturday, Northwestern took down Rutgers in convincing fashion by a score of 21-7 on homecoming weekend. The win comes 2 weeks after Pat Fitzgerald's squad got embarrassed in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it also marks Rutgers' fourth loss in a row. Michael, does this win for Northwestern say more about the Cats improving or Rutgers being bad?
I'm gonna say it. Cats are improving. They're doing well. And this is like Northwestern showed up homecoming week and was just about the opposite team of like what they've been all year long, of what I expected Northwestern to be coming into this game. They're a team that was tearing it up on the aerial attack pretty much, I mean, relatively speaking, but that's how they were succeeding offensively, was through the air. And then on defense is the defensive line that was stepping up. The run defense was there. Bryce Gallagher was looking like a faster Blake Gallagher. Tomi Adebayor was a monster. I think Northwestern is taking strides, and it's the same point that I harp for a lot of just Northwestern is a team that improves down the stretch, and they always stink to start out, but by the end of the year, they're always a solid team, and they're can always put up a fight even in down years. And I think Northwestern's just making improvements to that point where they can be not a good team, not a great team, but just an all right team. You know, they can be feisty, that type of team. And obviously, it's still a big uphill battle to 500 bowl game, but they're headed in the right direction, and it's a little bit of momentum. And to play a Big Ten game and dominate like that, especially defensively, is it's very good to see for Northwestern fans.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I'll say, I want to apologize to any members of the team. Last episode, I did say that I did not think that Northwestern would win a game for the rest of the season. I was wrong. So congrats to Northwestern, to the football team, to Pat Fitzgerald. But I do think, honestly, that this game was more about showing how bad Rutgers really is. Obviously, so they had a good start to the season, beating, some pretty bad non-conference teams, Syracuse, which turns out to be a pretty bad team. And obviously they've had a, very rough stretch of Big Ten play right before playing Northwestern, number 5 Ohio State, Michigan State, all teams ranked within the top 10. They all got blown out except for the game against Michigan. But it just doesn't seem like Rutgers is a very good team. I do think that, Northwestern, is improving. How much, that game was a reflection of it, I think speaks more on how bad I think Rutgers is versus, how much better Northwestern may have got. It was a pretty convincing win. But at the end of the day, there still were a lot of mistakes that I think that, other good, even like mediocre teams would exploit. And I think that Rutgers showed, on Saturday that they're not even a mediocre team. They're probably still one of the worst teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I think I overestimated Rutgers a little bit. I was doing some like preview stuff of just looking at them before the game started, and I was thinking, all right, well, they returned like 21 total starters. I'm like, okay, that's got to be pretty good. And then I looked at who they beat, and I'm still in the mindset, even though Syracuse has been good like one time in the past 15 years. In my head, I'm thinking back to a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember when they were a pretty solid team in the ACC. They're ranked for, I think, the entire year. In my head, that's still Syracuse, even though I'm pretty sure that team is like all graduated by now. But I still look at a Syracuse win. I'm like, oh, that's solid. That's solid. And I mean, it's more or less looking at Northwestern and still thinking Northwestern is going to run it every single time they get the ball. And they're just going to, and sure, they still emphasize the run game, but it's becoming more with Mike Bajakian, it's becoming more of a passing scheme. And I will say, I think I thought Rutgers was better than they are. I should have looked at the history of Rutgers instead of just looking at, Greg Schiano got the team to improve. They got a lot of returning starters. But regardless, I think a conference win is a conference win, even though it is against a Rutgers team like that. They put up a good fight against Michigan, and that's a good loss. That's what you phrase it as. So Rutgers pretty much won that game. And so coming in, they pretty much beat Michigan. So for Northwestern to beat Rutgers, that's pretty solid in my eyes for Northwestern. That's a big step in the right direction. A lot of momentum.
That is true. Yeah, I think that going into Michigan, obviously it's gonna be a tough game. The big house, Michigan has all the momentum in the world right now. But we'll see what happens. Coming back to the Rutgers game, what do you think the best part of the game was? For Northwestern, who was the best player on the field for the Cats?
I would say I was most impressed by Hilinski today, just because of his composure and his quick passes, his accuracy with those quick throws. It was something that when he announced that he was going to transfer to Northwestern from South Carolina, you saw the name and you read scouting reports, you watch highlights, and what jumps off the page is his quickness, his ability to make those quick throws. And it was something that he hadn't really done a ton of for Northwestern thus far. And whether that's a product of receivers, play calling, whatever it may be, regardless, it wasn't there to begin with. But against Rutgers, it certainly was. I was very impressed by the receivers, I will say, by their just ability to get open. I think there's also just, again, Rutgers defense was way worse than I thought. Receivers getting open in the middle of the field, and it was overall a great called game. But Hilinski was cool and composed every time he was in the pocket, and he was making those quick reads, and he was following the game plan. And when he was sitting in the pocket and the Rutgers D line would get to him when he was facing pressure, he didn't panic. He, again, stayed composed, and he made the right read, and he let the play develop when he had to. And he was willing to take a hit or two if that meant he was going to make the throw. And that resiliency is something that you love to see in a quarterback, especially someone who's new to the program and starting, what is this, his third game started? I think it's his third game.
Ohio,
Yes.
Nebraska.
But to see that is great improvement. It's great to see like what could be for the future for the Cats. And if you had told me that Evan Hull would come into this game, would end this game with 25 rushes for 53 yards, I would have thought Rutgers ran away with this, blew out Northwestern. But Hilinski stepped up and was the difference maker, and sort of turns a new leaf as to like, is Northwestern going to become more of an aerial type offense? I don't know. Who did you see besides Hilinski?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say I think Hilinski had a good performance. He did miss some throws out there, but I mean, like you said, he was composed, he was cool, collected, almost threw a couple of picks. I will say that. But I think, I mean, like the player in my eyes who made all the difference in the world, Stephon Robinson Jr. I mean, Northwestern would not have won this game without him. I think that this game, I mean, like he's been shown all year, he's a dog. He's an absolute dog. Watching the game, he was kind of the one to like kind of make the big plays happen for Northwestern. Obviously, on that first drive, he had that, that long 40-yard catch to kind of get things going. And then he, throughout the game, like he was making big plays. And obviously he had he caused those two big pass interference calls down in the red zone, which helped, turn, those trips into touchdowns. I think that without him, Northwestern, might have lost this game. Yeah, it could have lost this game. Obviously, with the loss of Bryce Kurtz, I think that there's a lot of questions, in the air. Like, who else is it going to be outside of Stephon Robinson? Is Robinson going to be able to, kind of get open with all the maybe pressure that's going to be on him? Also, shout out Malik Washington, had a great game, had a great catch and run. But I think Stephon Robinson really made all the difference in the world. Hilinski did have a good game, but I think that a big portion of that was due to the play of Stephon Robinson just getting open time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, you just want, at this point, when you lose by about $1 billion to Nebraska, you're just looking for some baby steps forward. And I think that he didn't play a perfect game. And I think Robinson had a big drop, I think, at one point. But for those guys, it's great improvement on their end. And yeah, I think to your point, Stephon Robinson, it's something, he brings an element that Northwestern didn't have last year. And it was really the one big knock on Northwestern was that they didn't have a playmaking receiver, and that kind of hindered their pass game. Like Ramad Shaquille Bowman was a very productive receiver, and I don't know if he works as a wide receiver one though on a Big Ten contending team. So I think Stephon Robinson I thought would be about Kyrick McGowan, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. He's ended up being way better in terms of production than Kyrick McGowan, which I have been very impressed with. And I don't know about you, but I saw Kansas receiver transfers to Northwestern. I'm Kansas receiver. Okay, I guess we'll settle with that. He's been great.
He's a dog. He's a dog. He's
Certified. That cat's a dog.
That cat's a dog.
That cat's a dog.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So on the offensive side, seeing Robinson Jr. explode was definitely impressive. What about the defense? Do you think that this was kind of like a freak performance for the defense? Do you think they'll be able to keep up this level of play against future opponents?
Here I am coming back with another slightly positive take for Northwestern. I think that level of dominance that they had against Rutgers is not permanent. It's not anything sustainable. It won't really show up in Ann Arbor, but it's a step in the right direction. And like that, it's just about taking the baby steps. And I think it could snowball into the defense improving to become something that's not really an abomination to the team. And it comes out there, you've grown. Oh, the defense is coming out. All right, that's an easy 7. I think what Mike Hankwitz did really well was that he made a scheme that wasn't very difficult for players to understand. Like, you got to remember, these players are doing quarter system homework right now. They got midterms too. Like, these guys are swamped. So I think Hankwitz did a fantastic job of making a scheme that wasn't too difficult for players to just get and understand and buy into. And it led to productive defenses year in and year out. And it's because Northwestern kind of just has the mindset of like, we're going to outwork you. And so these players would just outwork and outperform. And they were able to do that because they didn't have to worry about some tricky scheme and like filling certain gaps. And if they don't fill a gap, then suddenly the whole thing is busted. And O'Neal came in and kind of developed this scheme that I think was a little too complex at first. I think he kind of came in with a little bit of lofty goals, and I don't know, it takes time for any player to learn anything new in terms of scheme, but to go from Hankwitz to O'Neal might have been a big difference. And I think O'Neal really just simplified things on Saturday, and it showed on the field that players were able to buy into it more. They were able to better understand their role and just do what they want to do and be tackling machines. And I think an O'Neal adjusting to his team rather than forcing his team to adjust to him was the big difference maker for the unit, because having guys like Tomi Adebayor on the defensive line, that's a special player right there. That cat's a dog. And so you got to take advantage of that. And there are talented players on Northwestern defense, and it's just about making sure things are fluid.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, I think that the defense, a big part of, I think, the problems, initially were scheme related, and that this game, obviously, it's a great sign. How can this game not be a great sign of things to come? But I think I'm not as optimistic as you are about the future of the defense, especially, going into Michigan. It's just like, that's not who you want to play.
It's relative optimism. I think Blake Corum is going to have a field day against Northwestern. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Peter McIntyre, with all due respect, is going to get trucked over. But again, baby steps.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, this was, I mean, as good of a, as I think on Saturday, the defense played as good as it could have played. Obviously limiting any Big Ten team to 7 points is, no easy feat. It was definitely great to see. But I think it's really just hard to tell, what that's going to look like against other Big Ten opponents. I mean, the rest of Northwestern's schedule is also pretty daunting. I mean, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, even Purdue now, apparently it looks like I mean, we'll see. But Purdue looks like a team that could, that does have, an explosive offense. But regardless, it's just too early to tell, in my eyes, how the defense is going to perform for the rest of the year.
Will the run defense be? How many yards will they give up per game by the end of the year, do you think? They're at like 230 before Rutgers.
I think it's still going to be whatever it is. It's going to be in the bottom 5 of the Big Ten.
Do you think it's over 200?
I think it's over. I think it's hovering around 200.
Yeah.
I mean, just the offenses they play, and the Michigan, Iowa. I mean, Iowa's offense isn't, anything insane, but again, neither is Nebraska's. So it's one of those things where I think that, they got not lucky, but with Rutgers, but, I think they matched up, the defense matched up well with, the personnel that Rutgers had. And just, I mean, no hate to Peter McIntyre, but
That was out of pocket.
that, but I just, don't think he's at the caliber that, someone like Patty Fisher or Blake Gallagher was at. I don't think he's going to get there by the end of the year. I don't think he's going to come close.
And so looking to Michigan, I'll just open it up with, do you think Northwestern can cover the 21-point spread? It opened at 21 points yesterday. Do you think they can cover that?
I think it'll be close. I think it'll be obviously, that's the whole point of the spread. If I had to give an answer, I would say no. I would say, obviously 21 points is, it's a lot. It's a lot of points. But at the same time, this Michigan offense can put points up in a hurry. Northwestern has shown that they could be very susceptible, to good offenses naturally. And I think also another big factor is the bye week. Michigan, has had a week off. They're going to have another week to prepare. They're playing at home. I don't think it's a game, when they're potential college football playoff contenders, they're ranked 6th right now in the country. I don't think this is a game that they're going to overlook. I think they're going to see this as a game that they need to win, not just win, but, blow Northwestern out in. And I just think that Northwestern's personnel is just not even just personnel, but just personnel and, how they've been executing is just not up to the standard of where they're going to be able to even, lose by less than 21. I mean, they lost to Nebraska by 49.
That was a different era. We're in the post Nebraska era.
We're in the Bryce Gallagher era now.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think they're going to cover the spread?
No, I don't. No. In my eyes, I think if Michigan was ranked 14th in the nation, they're the exact same team, but they were 14th. I think Northwestern covers. I think it comes down to Northwestern has 10 points in them. That's my thinking. Northwestern can put up 10 points, maybe 13. And Michigan, again, Blake Corum is a stud, certified stud. And I think he's going to run all over the Northwestern defense. I mean, if anyone's been able to do it beyond Rutgers, Northwestern single-handedly started the Kenneth Walker for Heisman campaign. So beyond that, Kenneth Walker's a very good back, but he's not a Heisman back. What made him a Heisman back was him just absolutely embarrassing Northwestern. I think Blake Corum's going to have some sort of game like that where he just is there's no answer for him. And I think if Michigan was 14th in the nation, they would put up 28 points, 31 points because they take the win, but they're not in the conversation for the college football playoffs. So they don't got to worry about running up the score. Being 6th in the nation and for Harbaugh being on the hot seat for the past however many years, he's got to win now. He's going to run up the score and he's going to bring in JJ McCarthy to make some plays, and they're just going to score as much as they can. And I think that they're going to hang 40 on Northwestern, maybe 35, 38. I would say my score prediction would be 38-13. And so, yeah, I think Michigan's just too good of a team. Their defense is not going to let Northwestern get anything. And Northwestern's offense at that is still subpar. It's developing. It's under construction. But I don't see them Hilinski as good as you looked. Stephon Robinson as good as you looked on Saturday. That's against Rutgers, who has been an embarrassment to the conference for years, and now you're going up against Michigan, who is a hungry team that just wants that wants it. They want it, and they're gonna want it more than Northwestern will, and I think that's gonna show.
The Sky team. I mean, yeah, Cam Mitchell again. Not to call anyone out, but Cam Mitchell got burned deep twice, against Rutgers. And, the touchdown pass could not be more wide open. And the same goes for that big reception that Melton had in the middle of the field. I mean, that should have been a touchdown, but that ball was underthrown. Regardless, I think even outside of Cam Mitchell in the secondary, I mean, just, AJ Mitchell seemed to have a good game. Not AJ Mitchell, AJ Hampton. My apologies. But, I want to see Brandon Joseph get more involved. I mean, the fact that, his name really hasn't been mentioned at all is, kind of concerning considering the season he had last year. It's not like he has to be replicating that with the amount of interceptions, but, his impact on the field, I think, is not really, felt. The same goes with, a player like Bryce Jackson. So I think the Sky team is definitely still a major concern. For the run defense, obviously the run defense needs to be improved, but I mean, on Saturday they look good, and that's about all you can ask for. And then outside of that, I mean, I think the running offense is another big issue. I mean, Northwestern was able to, I think they got that early lead and didn't relinquish it, but they were, I mean, frankly, pretty bad running the ball. They averaged 2.8 yards per carry. Like Claire ripped off, a few good chunk runs, for 10, 12 yards. But just in general, I mean, Evan Hull, 25 carries for 53 yards. That's just not going to cut it, against a team like Michigan to even have a fighting chance against them. I would say Ryan Hilinski, though, he's got wheels.
Sneaky quick. He's got Big Ben speed where you see him and you're like, oh, this guy ain't moving. But then every once in a while he turns on the jets.
Yeah, he's chugging along, roll right. But I think the team still has a lot of weaknesses that were, clearly put on display against Rutgers. Outside of Robinson, there's really, Malik Washington had a great game, but just, to have just like two guys who are not really the biggest, like over the top threats is still kind of a problem. The running game hasn't really been efficient against Power 5 competition all year. And then the defense still, I mean, there's still a lot of question marks around this team that make me, not very optimistic about them in terms of, trying to predict their future success. But, I think that a lot of those questions I think that people will get the answers to a lot of those questions, whether those are good or things they want to hear or not want to hear, this weekend against Michigan.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the key for Northwestern keeping it close is this weekend?
I think it comes down to the defense. I think it comes down to, obviously being able to stop the run and the pass. But I think it comes down to, bending and not breaking. Against Nebraska, it was a lot of breaking. Even against Rutgers, or not against Rutgers, but just in general, Northwestern hasn't really done a good job of being able to stop teams once they start rolling on offense. Once the team starts putting numbers on the board, Northwestern, unlike, last year where, they would limit, a team would be on the 5 or the 10 and, they'd be able to force a field goal. Or if a team comes off a touchdown drive, they'd be able to force a 3 and out. That really hasn't been Northwestern's defense this year. If they can just give, kind of disrupt the rhythm of other teams, I think that, the offense will be able to do enough to kind of at least keep the game close. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the defense is key, but I think it comes down to the run game and for Evan Hull and Andrew Clare to show up. Evan Hull has sneakily not been that good against Power 5 opponents. He's like when he tore it up against Ohio and he tore it up against Indiana State. Evan Hull is kind of just the king of like garbage time yards and the king of beating up on bad teams. And Andrew Clare has been the guy who's really just been who to go to against actual like Big Ten programs, more higher tier programs. It's been Andrew Clare, and I think that becomes because of his experience. But he's just a smart back, and Evan Hull is a little less shifty, and I think that he can be stopped sort of easily. He's a little more formulaic. But I think them establishing the run early and just taking time off the clock in their drives is going to be critical because, like you said, Michigan has players that can score in a hurry. There's a reason why they're 6th in the nation. And so when you're playing a team like that, you don't want them to have the ball. And sure, this is an incredible defense from Michigan. But if Northwestern can string together a few longer drives, if they just get a lot of plays, a lot of play clock used, then I think that they'll have a fighting chance in this game, at least to cover the spread. No one would have said Purdue would have beaten Iowa. If Northwestern can take some time off the clock and establish themselves on offense sort of early, that they're not just going to be stagnant, they're not going to lay over and die, then I think that's Northwestern's best shot at keeping this game close. Well, from NU Takes, I'm Michael Barthelemy.
And I'm Didi.
The Cats go to Ann Arbor this week against Michigan. We'll see you all next week.